Hey there. Alright, so this video is just going to be a ramble. I'm going to be talking about film photography because I finally got my pictures developed and I got a scanner so that I was able to scan the pictures, and now I have them in full digital form and I can see them. I have the photos here. These are just the developed negatives. I haven't printed any of them. I might. I don't know. Hold on, let me put this back without making too much noise. But yeah, this video is just going to be talking about the pictures. If you're not into film photography, then you could just have this in the background and it'll just be, noise. If you are into photography, then enjoy. Either way, it's just going to be a ramble video. I'm just going to be talking about the pictures. Now, unfortunately, I have no physical, picture that I can look at while I'm talking about them, so I can't get too specific about the pictures as I talk about them because I have nothing to look at. But I have kind of memorized them. I think there were, in total, it was 6 rolls, and I think in total there were 174 pictures. That's probably not, all of the pictures that could have possibly come out of 6 rolls, just because some of them were just completely garbage. I have a knack for nighttime photography, but I don't have the patience for actually good nighttime photography. So a lot of them just come out complete garbage. But anyway, so we're going to talk about the pictures. And I figured we would structure this video starting with the ones that I consider to be the worst and then working our way towards the ones that I consider to be pretty good, because I think that there are some that are actually pretty good. But yes, some of them did come out pretty garbage. So we'll start with the garbage. Like I said, there were 6 rolls. Actually, one of them was not mine. We bought a film camera at like a garage sale or something, just as like a decoration, but it actually turned out that there was film in that camera, and so I had that roll developed just to see what was on it. Turns out there was nothing on it. The person didn't take a single picture, and that was just a complete waste of that roll, but I had no way of knowing that, so it's not a big loss. I didn't pay for that roll. I mean, I guess I paid to get it developed, but it wasn't that expensive. Just to get it developed wasn't that expensive. When you don't get like scans or prints or anything, it's not that bad. But yeah, so that was a bit of a waste. So there were 5 of my rolls. Now, 3 of those rolls were taken very recently, as of this March, this last March. My family took a trip to visit family, and then we also spent some time in St. Augustine, Florida. And so that's where most of these pictures were taken. But 2 rolls were taken much earlier than that. And by much earlier, I mean in the realm of 3 to 4 years ago. I've been just sitting on these rolls of film for a long time and have been too lazy to get them developed. The place where I have to go to get them developed is like an hour and a half away. And it's just a bit of a hassle, honestly. So it's not something that I can just, run to the place to get them developed or anything like that, right? So, I mean, honestly, I have been sitting on those for a long time, but still, longer than I needed to, but it is what it is. I have them developed now, so we can see what they came out like. So one of those 2 rolls was taken, I think the earlier of the 2, honestly, was taken like in a park, like on a walking path through like the forest, and then it comes up to like a lake. I'll just flash the pictures up on the screen as I talk about them. Like I said, I have nothing to look at in front of me, so I won't be able to speak about any of them in specific, at least not yet. And like I said, we're starting with the bad ones, so there's not a lot to talk about. I'll probably just be, like I said, flashing them up on the screen right now, but As you can probably see, they're bad. They're bad. I've come to learn from this batch of photos that either one of two things is true. Either I am just a really bad overcast photographer, or you just shouldn't take pictures in overcast weather because the pictures just, there's nothing going on. The pictures are really muted. There's not a lot of vibrance in the colors. Everything is very bland, very bland. Also, just my, my framing is just really terrible. There's no like subject. It's all very boring. So these were really bad pictures. Some of the ones that were taken over the water are not super bad, but I still don't like them, honestly. Like I said, I think most of it has to do with the light. Well, most of it has to do with me as a photographer. I'm sure a really good photographer could make good photos in overcast weather, but I think a bit of it is just that in overcast lighting, there's no, there's no contrast. I think contrast is what makes pictures, interesting to look at. There's a difference. Whereas these pictures, it's just the whole thing is just one big blob. It's like one big smear. So I just wasn't super jazzed with those. Maybe with a different type of film or something, it would have come out better. I'm not sure. But I didn't like how these came out. There was one that was kind of interesting. It was like kind of like a macro shot of some leaves. That was another thing. I took it in the fall, like well into the fall, like not the fall where like the leaves are changing colors, because that would have been a good picture where like, the leaves are changing colors. Or actually, no, maybe it was the spring. Maybe it was like early spring that I actually took those pictures. Now that I think about it, like I said, this was like 4 years ago, so it's like very faint memory of this. But there were pictures with trees that had like white blossoms on it, and obviously that doesn't happen in the fall, so it must have been early spring. I guess all of the trees, well, most of the trees were just dead because, well, not dead, but they didn't have leaves on them, just because in the winter they lose their leaves. Yeah, that must have been what it was. Either way, a lot of the trees are just completely bare, and they're just brown and gray and boring. It's just they're just boring. So the pictures were not good. I was not a fan of those. It is what it is. It's a good learning experience, like I said. Now I know that if it's overcast, I should probably just avoid taking pictures, simply because they're probably just not going to come out as well. I mean, when everything is the same, intensity, right, of light, like you're not going to get super cool like bokeh artifacts and stuff. Like bokeh is like one of the coolest aspects to like photography, especially when using like I say higher end, even though a film camera is not particularly high end, but just, an actual camera with like an actual lens that, has, it can go down to like a 2.2 aperture or something like that, right? Like a big sensor, or in the case of film, like 35 millimeter isn't huge. I mean, you've got like medium format and large format film that's way bigger, but even still, I mean, and some of the pictures I took have a lot of depth of field, and that's really cool, especially when you have points of intense light where, you get those rings of bokeh. But in an overcast day, you're not going to get that, or at least you're not going to get it as much, simply because there isn't that intensity of light concentrated in certain parts of, the world. It's all uniform, like overcast lighting. So, yeah, going forward, I probably won't take pictures in overcast lighting, but I don't know, never say never, I guess. Like I said, I'm willing to admit that a good portion of it probably just comes down to my skill as a photographer. I'm sure a good photographer can take great pictures in overcast weather. So it's just something that if I want to get good pictures out of it, then I would need to practice. But it's hard to practice with a film camera because it's just kind of tedious and expensive to work with. So it's a situation where, like, if I got like a fairly comparable digital camera to the film camera I have, then I could practice with that more regularly and get more immediate feedback, right? Which is important when practicing something, is that immediate feedback, because that's an aspect of film that you don't get, right? Like, you have to take all the pictures and then develop the film, which there could be a gap between that. Then it takes a little bit to develop the film, then you get the film back, then you got to scan the film, and it's like there's a much longer process between taking the picture and then seeing the result. Whereas with the digital camera, right, like, you get it back immediately. So potentially an option for the future if I ever have enough spare cash lying around that I can justify it. But the more immediate solution is just to not take pictures in overcast weather. But that was the first batch of pictures. Like I said, none of those were very good at all, in my opinion. None of them spoke to me really at all. A lot of them were just really shitty. Like, no subject at all. Like, your eye isn't drawn to any part of the frame. Some of them, like the ones with the roads, your eye is drawn down the road, but then there's just nothing. It's like, there were some where there was a person at the end of the road. Those are probably, from a technical perspective, the best of that batch, simply because there is a subject. There is, leading towards the subject in the frame, right? But I still just don't really like them because there's not a lot of color. There's not a lot of contrast. It's just, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess you could just artificially bump up the contrast, but I just don't know how good that would look. And I like keeping the image to be, fairly unaltered. Obviously, there's going to be some alteration when you decide how to white balance the negative and whatnot, but either way, it's just not, that wasn't my best batch. So when we're moving on to batch 2, I feel like we're going a little slow maybe, so let's speed this up a bit. Honestly, batch 2, there weren't too many good pictures because this batch was taken at night. Like I said, I like nighttime photography because, like I was saying with bokeh and depth of field, you get a lot of that because the entire surrounding is dark, generally upwards of pitch black, right? And then you have these spots of very bright light in the form of light bulbs and street lights and things like that, right? So I like that look a lot, but in order to get good nighttime photos consistently, you need, a tripod, and you need like a shutter controller, whatever that's called, I don't know, so that you don't bump the camera and everything, and then you have to take long exposures, and it's a very slow process that I just don't enjoy, and I also just don't have that equipment. I mean, I have a tripod, obviously, this camera is on a tripod, but I don't have the shutter button, and I could easily get that, but I don't know, there's just an aspect of photography that I enjoy, which is just almost like the exploration of photography, which is just like you go out into the world and you just find cool shit and then you capture it forever, and then like that moment is yours forever. I like that aspect, and there's something about having a bunch of equipment and cumbersome like methods of just like, you got to set up the camera and then you got to put it down and you got to click it and then you got to wait, and then like if shit moves then it's ruined, or like, it's just, I don't know, it's just not for me personally. So I'm kind of at odds with myself, where I like how night photography looks, but I'm not willing to do what it takes to actually get good nighttime pictures. Just a bit of a shame. I mean, there's really good low light digital cameras, like the Sony a7 III is really good at low light. So potentially, if I had a camera like that, that would be like the perfect situation where you don't need to set up everything. It's just, you can get pretty decent pictures out of low light situations just kind of on the fly, right? But that camera's really expensive, so that's a long ways off, if ever. But anyway, out of this batch, there were some decent ones. There were a lot that were just nothing, like literally pitch black, like the film was just wasted. There were a lot of them were just blurry, because obviously when you have a long shutter time, a slow shutter speed, the more you move, the more light is getting in and it's hitting the different parts of the film, and that's what makes it blurry. So a lot of them are blurry, but there were some that were pretty crisp. The one of the kitchen is kind of cool in my opinion. I like that one a good bit. There's one of a cannon. It's like a memorial or some kind of like statue or something. That one's kind of cool. A little dark, but still decent. There's one of a place I have honestly no idea where I even took the picture, but it's got like a claw machine. I don't know. That one came out okay. It's a little blurry, so I don't know. This batch was, in my opinion, a little better than the other one, simply because the pictures are more interesting to me. Obviously, a lot of them came out blurry. So, like I said, from a technical perspective, maybe there's an argument to be made that they are worse, but I consider them to be better just simply because I like them more. So, that's just me. That's just my opinion. But those were the first two rolls. Like I said, those two came from many years ago. That was like 3 to 4 years ago at this point. So a lot of time has passed. It's not like I've been taking pictures though, like on the side this whole time. Like I'm a much better photographer now. So honestly, the pictures that I took very recently are not like a huge step up in terms of quality. I do consider them to be better, but I think that has more to do with the fact that I was at a better location, just with cooler things to take pictures of. So it just kind of worked out. I don't really know how to structure these. I guess I'll just, I was trying to think, because like if I'm trying to go chronologically, but I guess I'm already forgetting my whole method, which was to go from worst to best. So I guess we'll start with the worst. I'm trying to think of which one is the worst out of these new ones. I mean, there's a few that are just kind of like blown out or bad. I was using a slightly too long shutter speed for a lot of these pictures. Maybe not a lot. For a few of these pictures, I was using a shutter speed that was too slow. So a few of them came out a little overexposed. So a little unfortunate, but it is what it is. In terms of bad to best, honestly, a lot of the ones that are bad, quote unquote, I don't actually hate them. It's just that there's not a lot going on. A lot of them are just very simple or just don't have like a strong subject. There's one of like the sand, like I don't know what it's called, like the berm of a beach, right? So there's not like a huge, like there's not a very focal subject in this picture. But I think it still looks cool. It's got good colors. It's kind of like a pinkish blue because the sky is blue. And then like it was early morning, I think, when I took that picture. So you get like that orangish, pinkish sun. So that I honestly like the colors. I like how it looks. But yeah, it doesn't have a subject or anything. It's just kind of abstract. That's okay sometimes, but I feel like usually it's better to have a subject simply because you want that thing that draws the eye, you know. It's a very simple concept. I'm not like, yes, I'm the first person that's ever considered that it's important to have a subject in your pictures. Anyway, Moving on, there's a few that I took under the pier at St. Augustine. Those came out pretty good, honestly. I took one vertically that I thought I was going to end up liking, or I guess I should say portrait. It was a portrait. Uh, I thought I was going to like that one more, but I actually like the one that's landscape better. The one that's portrait, it doesn't have the sky on the sides up above where you can see the sky on the landscape one because it's a wider image. Um, and that makes it feel very claustrophobic, in my opinion, as compared to the one that's landscape, which feels very like much more like breathable. I don't know. It's a weird way to describe a picture, I know, but it just like that's just what I feel about it. Um, the pictures under the pier could have been a little bit more centered under the pier. When I was there, I thought I was pretty centered, but the pictures don't look too centered. I think it might be a little bit of an optical illusion because the shadow makes it look uneven, but I do think that I was a little off center, so a little bit of a shame there, but it is what it is. Um, and then I guess moving along, we get to the better pictures. I took some. I guess I'll say that the next jump up would be to the ones I took during the sunrise. We caught the sunrise on one of the days we were there, and got some pretty good pictures, honestly. Um, they're very dark, some of them, especially once the sun had fully like risen and was like mostly visible. Obviously, the sun is very bright, so the rest of the image is very dark to compensate when you're, pointing a camera directly at the sun. But they still look good. I mean, there's still detail in the waves and whatnot. And that like silhouetted look is kind of cool. Some of them are a little too silhouetted. There's one where my parents and my sister are standing kind of next to each other. But they're very silhouetted. It is pretty difficult to even see them. So a little too silhouetted. But there's some of my sister just like standing like near the waves. Those look pretty good because you get like the reflection off the waves. And so it's a bit brighter overall as an image. And then she's more distinctly silhouetted, which is kind of cool. And then I guess we get to the best pictures, which are just random ones I took on the beach. Well, I guess also I'm kind of forgetting about some. There were, we'll get to these first. There were a few, we went to, what was it called? It was like the Castillo de la Muerto or something like that. I don't know. It was a fort in St. Augustine. And it's right next to like a river or something. I don't know. So there's a lot, it's like a harbor. There's a lot of like boats and stuff. So I took some pictures of the boats. I really like the picture that I took of the two boats. It's a very bright image. I don't know if this has a name. It probably does. But there's a look with some pictures, some photographs. It has almost like a pastel quality where the colors are all very bright and the picture is very bright overall, but it's not blown out, right? It's just a bright image. I don't know what the name of that is, but I like that style of photography. And I managed to get a couple that kind of have that vibe. But yeah, a lot of mine came out a little bit higher contrast with, more darks and lights and stuff instead of the whole image being light. But the ship one was one that I would consider to be fairly, in that quality where it's a rather bright image overall. I'm getting the flashing icon that says I'm about to run out of space, so I might get cut off here. I'm going to try to do the thing where I just start recording again and see if that works, but we'll see what happens. Anyway, we're going to keep going. I might be forgetting some. If I forget any, I'll just throw them up at random on the screen and you'll see them. I guess I won't talk about them, but it's not a huge deal. Um, so there were some I took at the beach of just like random people. I caught one of like a surfer out on the waves. That one looks pretty good in my opinion. You get like the white water of like the crashing wave, and his pose is pretty candid, pretty good. There was another one of like three surfers just like moving out. They weren't actually actively surfing at the time, but then you get like all these seagulls across the top, and it looks kind of cool. There was one that was, it came out really well actually, of a kid flying a kite on the beach, and I made sure to get the kid and the kite. It was pretty challenging because I think I was using a 70 millimeter lens, which is not super zoomed in, but it's a bit more zoomed in than you would want when trying to capture. Okay, we've lost the feed. Hold on, hold on. We're gonna try to bring it back. Okay. Um, anyway, I was saying 70 millimeter lens. I was using a 70 millimeter lens. I could have, walked away from him to get, more of the scene in view, but it just worked out that I was able to capture it as it was. And that one came out pretty good. I like that one. You see the kid and you see the kite, and it looks nice. There's one of, I think it was at sunrise, but it was before the sun had fully come up above the horizon, that I captured the moon. The moon was visible. The thing about taking pictures of the moon is that the moon always looks smaller in the picture than it does in real life, which is a bit of a shame, but it's still kind of cool. I wish the moon looked a bit bigger in the image, but it is what it is. There were a few of my family members that looked pretty good. There's one of my sister walking away, and it has, like I was saying, that pastel quality where the image is pretty bright, and you get like this, like, it's a very like light image, but I like how that looks. So that one looks pretty good. There was one of a guy playing with his dog, and that one looks pretty good. I was happy to see that with a lot of these, the focus was pretty good. I was pulling focus decently well, because this is all manual focus. Some of them are a little out of focus, but for the most part, I would say most of these are passable at the very least. So I was happy to see that they weren't completely ruined by any means. I'm trying to think of what else. There was one of my mom and my sister standing outside of like a shop. This was in like the city of St. Augustine. That one kind of looks cool. It has a very like almost 90s feeling. There's something about like film that automatically just like takes you back, because obviously that's what they used back then, right? So yeah, I do like that feeling, that 90s aesthetic. Just my opinion, I don't know. And then finally, as far as I can think of, I don't know, I'm probably forgetting some, but what may be my favorite picture, it's not the most technically like good, well done picture, but there is a quality, and it's kind of interesting because it kind of goes against what I was just saying, where I was talking about how there's images that could be considered like almost pastel, where all of the colors are light and it's a very bright, vibrant image. This picture is very much not that, but I still really like it. It's a picture of a peacock. Now I got two pictures of a peacock. One is not that good, but the other is what I consider to be really good. Now, obviously, there are flaws that I can point out with the picture, right? Like, okay, well, I'll just start with saying why I like the picture. I like the picture because of the blue of the peacock. The blue is like, it's so bold. I love that blue in the peacock's like mane. I don't know what that's called, but anyway, I just really like how the blue came out. It's so rich. Even though that the picture overall is quite dark and muted. I still really like that. Now, the flaws with the image. Obviously, the rest of the peacock is almost a similar color to the rest of the background, so there's not a huge amount of separation between the rest of the peacock's body and the background, which is a bit of a shame, but I still really like the picture. Is it amazing? Like, technically amazing? No. But I still would consider it potentially my favorite out of all of the pictures. I would say it's either that one, the one of my sister walking away, or the one of the surfer guy. That one was pretty good. Oh, there's also one of like, there was a seagull flying by, like a single seagull, and I just whipped it and sniped it out of the air. So that one's kind of cool just because it was kind of like it was a very quick shot, right? So I'm kind of proud that it wasn't blurry or anything, right? Like, it was a fairly fast moving subject. I guess I had a pretty fast shutter speed, so it wasn't, crazy or anything, but still, I'm personally proud of it. So I like that one for that reason, but it's not the greatest picture or anything. Oh, there was one of the sunset with like 4 seagulls like flying out into the ocean, which I don't know where they're going, by the way, but that one was cool simply because it's like, you got the sun and then you have the 4 seagulls. It's like a very picturesque look. The seagulls didn't come out super large though, so that was a little bit of a shame, but that one's still cool. But yeah, I would say top 3 are the peacock, sister walking away, surfer guy. Probably those 3. Those have just like the most. I don't know what they have the most of, honestly. I just like them. Those are my favorite. You'll have to let me know what your favorites are. If you want to see these pictures in like, I would say higher quality, but really it's not going to be higher quality. If you want to peruse these pictures at your leisure, I have an Instagram, which is linked below, where I will post them at some point, potentially before this video goes up, so that they'll already be there if you decide to check it out. But yeah, you'll have to let me know, which pictures did you like? Did you like any of them? Were they all trash? Or are you like, oh my god, Connor's the worst photographer of all time? Let me know. No hard feelings. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you later.